12 days, 5,000 dead, amongst them infants, children, senior citizens, women. Ladies and gentlemen, war is costly. And the most successful wars seldom pay for their losses. What has happened in Gaza today is nothing short of a war crime. At least 500 people, let me repeat that, 500 people have been killed after a massive blast at a hospital in Palestine's largest city. It was not just a hospital. It was a refuge for people who had nowhere else to go. The war had taken everything away from them. This, by far, is the deadliest single incident since the Israel-Hamas war began. The death toll is only expected to rise, given that many people are still trapped under the rubble. Palestine has laid the entire blame on Israel, claiming that its airstrikes caused the explosion. The Palestinians are calling this a massacre of innocence.
He is a liar. His spokesperson and digital spokesperson tweeted that Israel did the hit, thinking that there is around this hospital a base for Hamas, and then he deleted that tweet. We have a copy of that tweet, and Talal can share with you that tweet. Now they change the story to try to blame the Palestinians.
Now, the Israelis are outright denying this claim. They say a misfired rocket by a Palestinian militant group is the reason for this deadly explosion. In fact, Israel is claiming to have evidence and intelligence to back their claims. They put out this intelligence and an audio recording while they made this claim. Take a look.
According to our intelligence, Hamas checked the reports, understood it was an Islamic Jihad rocket that had misfired, and decided to launch a global media campaign to hide what really happened. They went as far as inflating the numbers of casualties. They understood with absolute certainty that it was a rocket misfired by Islamic Jihad that damaged the hospital.
Hamas is responsible and should be held accountable for all civilian casualties. We saw the cost of this terrible war crime yesterday when a rocket fired by a Palestinian terrorist misfired and landed on a Palestinian hospital. The entire world was rightfully outraged, but this outrage should be directed not in Israel, but at the terrorists. As we proceed in this war, Israel will do everything it can to keep civilians out of harm's way. We have asked them and will continue to ask them to move to safer areas.
The blast at the hospital occurred just hours before US President Joe Biden stepped foot on Israeli soil. Since day one, Mr. Biden and the United States have been supporting Israel in their war against Hamas. And unsurprisingly today, the American president blamed the other side for what has happened to the hospital in Gaza.
I was deeply saddened and outraged by the explosion at the hospital in Gaza yesterday. And based on what I've seen, it appears as though it was done by the other team, not you. But there's a lot of people out there not sure. So we've got to overcome a lot of things.
Who do we blame for the death of 500 people? There are claims and there are counterclaims. Frederick Landu is a commander of the Israeli Intelligence Special Forces. He's joining us on the broadcast. Hiba Husseini is a former legal advisor to the Palestinian peace negotiating team. She's joining us on the broadcast as well. Hiba Husseini, Israel has today stepped out, put out evidence and said, this is not our doing. The American president, who is on Israeli soil as we speak, has given the Israelis a clean chit as well. Why do Palestinians not believe them if their claim is being backed by evidence that they have put out in the public?
We don't know what the evidence that they put out in the public. Nobody has been able to enter Gaza to investigate anything. This has been a social media and a media misinformation campaign from the outset. The Palestinians do not believe that this was a misfired rocket. killing 500 children and women and elderly and hospital staff, doctors, burning ambulances, burning people who took refuge in a church. This is a church hospital. And the atrocities, the massacre is the doing of the Israeli airstrikes. For two reasons. Number one, initial reports said that Israel gave them warning to move where to, and gave them 2 minutes warning. Then the airstrikes came. Second, just about a few minutes ago, there was some sort of a retraction by the Israeli spokespeople saying that we hit the courtyard of the hospital. So the story is changing and evolving. Again, a misinformation of media allegations and misallegations, claims and counter-claims. This was a massacre. Again, 12 days of airstrikes that have not stopped one single bit, from the air and also from the sea. No food, no water, no electricity. Who is investigating? The perpetrator is being the judge.
Frederick Landu, would you want to respond to that? A, what is the credibility of the evidence that Israel has put out? Why should the world believe it? B, the point that Hiba Husseini is putting out, that there were warnings by Israel to empty out the hospital. That didn't happen. Why were these warnings given if the idea was not to strike it by air? The question being, why will a Palestinian terrorist group target a hospital in Gaza? It simply doesn't make sense.
Good evening. Thank you very much. If you don't mind, I'm going to start with your last remark, and we'll make our way back. Why would they target their own hospital? We don't think that they targeted the hospital. All they do is fire rockets from the cemetery placed behind the hospital and store all of their weapons inside the hospital. This was a mistake. They tried to fire onto our civilians, and they had a malfunction of one of the ammunitions, and it landed sadly in the parking lot of the hospital. B, you asked us why we gave a warning. Now we're the bad guy for telling people where the war zone is and telling all of the northern part of Gaza to move south. We want to protect civilians. We are warning them. The northern part of Gaza is flooded with Hamas terrorists. Move south. We are providing water. We are providing medical aid. We are providing sanctuary in the south. Move south. Now let me go back to A, where you stated that maybe we don't have enough proof. So let's look at the proof. The missiles were shot from the cemetery at 18:59 yesterday evening. There were no airstrikes at 18:59 yesterday evening. There is clear video footage of these rockets being fired at 18:59 and falling sadly outside the hospital. When Israel uses aircraft to make airstrikes, there is a huge crater in the area of where the airstrike is. If we did such an airstrike, there would be nothing left. The footage from inside Gaza, from Palestinian journalists, shows a crater of about 1 meter on 1 meter. That's very small. And that corresponds with the small missiles that they use. Also, the cars are standing. There's only very little damage to cars in the area, the buildings in the area. Everything seems to be standing. And with all due respect to this number being thrown around, 500 people dead, where are the bodies? Where are all the blood? Look at what happened to us on the 7th of October. Can you compare the pictures? Of course not. And I would like to tell you from first-hand experience, this has happened dozens of times where they have had malfunctioned missiles. Just in the past 2 weeks, it happened 400 times. The Israeli Air Force and the Israeli army have canceled airstrikes and canceled special operations, including the taking out of high-level targets, because we were worried of civilian collateral damage. We don't aim at civilians. Hamas commit war crimes against Israeli civilians and now against their own people.
If Israel doesn't target civilians, how is it that 3,000 civilians are dead in Gaza? That is a question, Frederick Landu, that will need to be answered. But Hiba Husseini, if you want to respond or counter what Frederick Landu is saying, you're most welcome to do it, because the way he's putting it seems very logical, seems, the way he says what he has said, the evidence that he puts to us is logical. The evidence that Israelis are putting to us is logical. And the question, where are the bodies?
Israel puts any evidence it wants. Who's going to counter that until you have an actual visit to the site and investigation by independent people? This is the stories that we hear from them. I mean, very well structured arguments, but we don't buy it because we don't have the evidence on our side that they are structuring. It is their story. Again, they spin the story the way they would like to spin it. And again, they supply food and water. I think that's also false. There has been no water. They cut off. They declared, this is the policy. They declared that they're cutting off water supplies and they're cutting off food. And no food and no water has been entering Gaza. Moving people from the north to the south or the south to the north, again, people believed them. They moved in trucks, and what happened to the people? We saw the pictures. They killed people via airstrikes while they were moving target. I mean, those are the kinds, again, over 3,000 people killed, over 12,000 injured. So many people are under the rubble. We still cannot find them. Anyway, I will not respond to a story that has been spun out of proportion.
Hiba Husseini, then can I ask you, and I'll ask this to Frederick as well. Joe Biden, as we speak, is on Israeli soil. One of the aims of this bold visit, as it is being called, is to try and seal a humanitarian deal. Are you hopeful that will happen in the next 24 hours?
Our Prime Minister's office just announced, after a meeting of our cabinet joined by Mr. Biden, that we are allowing the Egyptians to let humanitarian aid into the southern part of Gaza. We are opening the lines for the southern part of Gaza. There will be water, there will be medical aid. The north part, we have declared this already last Friday. The northern part of Gaza is dangerous for civilians, and we call them to move south. We have to stop what Hamas is doing, and that is using their own civilians as human shields. They are shooting from hospitals, they are storing weapons in schools, and even a couple of days ago, they stole 24,000 gallons of oil, of petrol, from the UN camp in the southern part of the Gaza Strip that was to aid the civilians coming from the north. The Hamas terrorists are war criminals. Not only do they aim rockets into Israeli civilians, they are now doing it against their own people. Stop forgetting, Hamas is ISIS. They do the same thing. There is no reason for civilians to be in a war zone. And every time that they are staying there, they are endangering themselves. And Hamas should let them go south where it is safe and there is running water. Israel never targets civilians. You've forgotten what happened only less than 2 weeks ago when the Hamas terrorists came into our land and killed babies in their beds. We don't do that. We do not do that. We only aim at the Hamas terrorists. We are not beheading babies. We are not burning bodies alive. We are not raping women. We are not kidnapping the elderly. What's going on here? What kind of a show are you handling that you're giving a legitimacy to these false claims? Of course there is proof. We have given footage. We have given recordings. And I call upon anybody independent who would like to investigate to go ahead and do it. But you have to be objective. You can't continue with this Palestinian propaganda, this falsehood. Are you on the good side or on the bad side? Are you on the side of the light or of the darkness, of good or evil? Decide where you sit and where you stand. And I can see the colors that you are wearing this evening. And that's why I am purposely wearing blue and white. Because with all due respect to the green, the red, and the black that you have purposely put on this evening, blue and white will always prevail.
Let's not divide colors on the basis of religion. It sometimes happens in my country as well. Let's not do that. Hiba Husseini, I'll give you the last word. There are many commentators who have said that the Palestinian cause was murdered on October 7th. Is that an assessment/sentiment that you share as well?
No, I do not share that sentiment. The Palestinian cause has been ongoing since 75 years with the refugee problem, with the Nakba in 1948. It's still ongoing and it will continue to go on. Israel will not have security unless we resolve the conflict, unless we have our own independent state. And unless we end this misery. These massacres cannot go on, this propaganda cannot go on, and this state of conflict cannot go on. Israel is an occupier, is an oppressor. It has all of these policies that have been implemented day in, day out. In the West Bank, there are killings every day. In East Jerusalem, there are killings every day. There are arrests. We have thousands of prisoners in jail who have been detained without trial. Israel is committing war crimes. Israel has engaged in a war without any kind of any remorse.
Is the propaganda finished, or can we talk about facts? We talk about facts, or are we going to continue about
so
the lies?
both sides.
You don't have prisoners in jail.
Both sides. Frederick, both sides have accused each other of propaganda. I wanted to hear from both of you, which I've done. Also to tell you, Frederick, the garment I'm wearing is a sari, and it's my grandmother's. If she was alive, she would have been about 105 years old today. She didn't know what his Israel-Hamas conflict was, and this sari in no way signifies any support for any side. What has happened in Gaza, the bombing of the hospital, 5 people dead, is simply criminal. What I'm wearing right now is simply my grandmother's sari. It signifies nothing else.
Beautiful.
We'll leave it there for the moment. Thank you very much.
Frederick? Save it for a different occasion.
Frederick, no, Frederick, I will not let you choose what I wear, and I will not let you choose what I say. I will say what I have to say, and I will speak the truth the way I see it. Truth, of course, has many versions. There is one version coming from Israel, and there's another version coming from Gaza. We've put both out. That is our journalistic duty, Frederick. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Hiba Husseini, for joining us as well. Thanks very much. Let's shift our focus from Gaza to an inferno that dominated headlines in Bangalore. And this inferno is once again raising questions about fire safety in our cities. Just take a look at these pictures. A massive fire broke out in a cafe on the terrace of a 4-story building. This happened in Koramangala, which is one of the poshest areas in the city. Just take a look at this. 2 people have suffered serious injuries, including this man on your screens, who is jumping off the terrace of this building when the cafe he worked for went up in flames. He thought there was no way to save himself, so he simply jumped off. Now, with the fire spreading at a rapid pace and all routes for safety seemingly shut, this man, who's part of the cafe's staff, decided to jump to save himself. He survived. That's a miracle. Now, the fire broke out after one of the cylinders, and let's put the visuals of the blast as well on our screens as we see this man trying to escape that fire. The fire broke out after one of the cylinders leaked, leading to this blast, which then led to multiple other cylinders bursting. A gym in the same building suffered extensive damages. Several vehicles parked in the building were also damaged. My colleague Imran was there, gets us this report.
Well, the fire department has brought the fire under control, and now they are at this top restaurant where mud pipe restaurant where actually the incident happened. But around 10:30 in the morning, a fire was seen. A huge blast also took place. What the fire officials are informing us is that it was a cylinder blast which led to the entire building engulfed in fire. The wrath of it, you can see. My cameraman show you that entire building caught fire, even up to the ground floor that you can see in the car there. It also caught fire. Now they would say that the restaurant mud pipe was under renovation. It was open for public, but a part section of it was open was being restored, and there were two people there who worked as employees in that restaurant. And that's when the cinder blast happened and the entire building caught fire. One of the what they say is someone who has not been identified yet jumped from the building. From the visuals, what you can see, in total 3 people have sustained injuries, and but the person are all out of danger is what the officials are informing us. Now there has been a lot of debris here on the ground which spilled onto the street here. It is one of the posh area of Bangalore where many IT companies, people working in the IT company reside and use this particular stretch of road to go to Whitefield, the tech corridor and other areas.